people who were missing as a child. What happened? I was best friends with this girl Miranda, who lived like 3 streets over from me. We were inseparable that summer. You know how it is when you're a kid and you have that one friend who's your whole world. Miranda's family was super nice. They had this big house with a finished basement where we'd spend hours playing make-believe and watching movies. One Friday in July, I rode my bike over to Miranda's like I did almost every day. When I got there, Miranda's mom, Patricia, was loading up their minivan with suitcases. I didn't think much of it, just assumed they were going somewhere for the weekend. Miranda and I went inside to play video games while her parents finished packing. Her older brother Josh was being annoying as usual, coming into the basement every 5 minutes to grab something or just mess with us. After a couple hours, Patricia called down that it was time to go. I figured that meant I needed to head home, so I followed Miranda upstairs. The weird thing was, nobody said anything about me leaving. Patricia just handed me a juice box and asked if I needed to use the bathroom before they hit the road. I was super confused, but also didn't want to seem rude, so I just went with it. I honestly thought maybe we were going to the mall or something and they were giving me a ride home after. But then we kept driving and driving for hours. Eventually, I worked up the courage to ask where we were going, and Patricia looked at me all surprised in the rearview mirror and was like, "To the beach house, sweetie. Remember? We've been planning this trip for months." And Miranda's dad, Rick, who was driving, kind of laughed and said something about how excited I must be to forget where we were going. That's when it hit me. They thought my parents had agreed to let me come on their family vacation. I started panicking inside but didn't know what to say. I was just a kid and these were adults, and everyone seemed so sure that this was the plan. Plus, I'd never been to a beach house before, and part of me was like, maybe my parents did arrange this as a surprise? I barely slept that night. I kept thinking about my parents and how worried they must be. The next morning at breakfast, I finally found the courage to speak up. I told Patricia that I didn't think my parents knew where I was. The look on her face is something I'll never forget. She went completely pale and dropped the spatula she was holding. She called Rick into the kitchen immediately, and they started whispering frantically while looking at me. Rick kept saying, "But William said it was all arranged." William was Miranda's uncle who had apparently been at their house earlier that day, and confirmed I was supposed to come along. That's when Patricia started crying and Rick looked like he was going to be sick. Josh, who had been listening to everything, suddenly got super serious and was like, "Holy shit, we literally kidnapped her." His mom yelled at him for his language, but nobody corrected him about the kidnapping part. The whole day was insane. Rick and Patricia kept trying to reach my parents while also acting super weird around me, like overly nice but clearly freaking out. Miranda had no idea what was happening and kept trying to get me to go swimming, while Josh kept making these dark jokes about them going to prison. That night, I overheard Rick and Patricia arguing. Patricia wanted to drive me back immediately, but Rick was scared they'd get arrested the minute they showed up with me. They decided to try calling my parents again in the morning. What they didn't know was that by this point, my disappearance was all over the local news. My parents had called the police when I didn't come home, and they'd found my bike abandoned in Miranda's driveway. With Miranda's family also suddenly gone, the police suspected they'd abducted me. The next morning, Patricia finally got through to my mom. I've never heard an adult scream so loud in my life. I could hear my mom through the phone from across the room. Within minutes, the local police near the beach house were at the door. I remember being so confused seeing police officers there. One female officer took me aside to ask if I was okay, if they had hurt me. I kept saying no, it was all a misunderstanding, but I could tell nobody really believed that. They took me to the police station where my parents were driving to meet me. The whole time, Miranda's family was being questioned separately. I found out later that Rick and Patricia almost got charged with kidnapping, but eventually the investigation showed it truly was a bizarre misunderstanding. Apparently what happened was, William, the uncle, had been talking to my mom about a different play date weeks before. He saw me at Miranda's house before they left, and just assumed I was the friend who was approved to go on the trip. Meanwhile, my parents never even knew William had been there or that Miranda's family was going away.